In today's episode, I talk about coaches and how they have helped me. Without help, I would not be where I am today.
You're listening to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. Join Ohio pharmacist Kim Newlove on her journey to become a voice actor. Episodes are a mix of solo podcasts about Kim's personal transformation and interviews with a variety of people who use their voices to advocate, educate, or entertain. Will Kim succeed in the voiceover industry? Subscribe and find out. And now, here's your host, Kim Newlove.
Thank you for joining me for episode 2 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. I am your host, Kim Newlove. You can read the show notes and subscribe to the podcast at thepharmacistvoice.com. That's thepharmacist with an S, voice.com. The solo shows of this podcast are about my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor, and this episode is a solo show. In today's episode, I want to talk about coaches and how they have helped me. Without help, I would not be where I am today. A word to the wise, though, this is not a how-to lesson on getting started in voiceover. I'm just sharing my story. Coming from a science background, I had to resist the urge to recite an orderly timeline of what I did and how I did it, like a science experiment. This episode is not a lab report. I'll shoot for a more creative delivery. When I started my voiceover business, everything was new to me. I wanted to download everything I needed to know instantly into my brain, like in the movie The Matrix. I felt like I knew enough to get started, though, and I did. By the way, if you haven't seen The Matrix, check it out. It's a great movie. I started with the desire to be a narrator. For the last 2 years, I have been learning how to narrate, which is the performance side of voiceover. But I also learned how to edit my audio and produce finished files. That's the technology piece of voiceover. Along the way, I am picking up what I need to know to run my business. Logos and business cards, social media and websites, marketing and networking. There's a long list. Let's talk about learning for a second. Have you ever learned how to do something new? Maybe playing the piano, learning a language, or driving a motorcycle? Did you start off knowing nothing and conquer the unknown? I bought my first motorcycle in 2002 when I was 23 years old. It was a black Honda Shadow VLX 600. I didn't know how to drive it at all, and I found out I was pregnant with my first child less than 24 hours after I bought it. What timing, right? My cousin Jim helped me drive my new motorcycle back to my father-in-law's barn so I could learn how to ride on country roads. Learning wasn't pretty. I didn't realize how tricky it would be to coordinate all 4 limbs at the same time. I stalled out a lot, especially when starting uphill from a stop position. I also didn't know that I needed a learner's permit and a motorcycle endorsement for my driver's license. Keep in mind that the year was 2002 and I didn't have access to information instantly like I do now. There were so many things I didn't know, but I was confident I could figure it out. I'm not the first person to buy a motorcycle, then learn how to ride it. There are plenty of motorcyclists in my family, which was helpful for support while I was learning. My cousin Jim tried to teach me how to ride, but his way wasn't exactly right for me. My cousin Sue took me to a bike dealer in a nearby town, and the dealer helped me learn on a small engine scooter. It only took a few weeks to build my confidence and get really good at beginner skills like accelerating, braking, turning, and balancing. I was starting to have fun. The scooter was a great idea. There was still a big problem, though. I didn't know how to drive my own motorcycle. My bike had a choke, a clutch, and 5 gears to shift through with my left foot. 1 down and 4 up, as they say. I had to learn how to drive my bike. I live in Ohio, and my Uncle Terry recommended I try the basic rider course through the Ohio Department of Public Safety. Some call it the Motorcycle Ohio program. It's a 16-hour program that teaches novice riders the mental and physical skills needed to safely ride a motorcycle. Small engine motorcycles like Honda Rebel 250s are provided. The Rebel was much easier to drive than my bike. My classmates and I practiced skills for 2 hours every Saturday for 8 weeks in the spring of 2003, which was only a few months after my first son was born. The course had the structure I needed, experienced teachers, and fun, supportive students. I had a blast. The best part was that I earned my motorcycle endorsement by taking the driving exam during the class. If you want to learn more about the basic rider course, visit motorcycle.ohio.gov. Once I passed the class and my licensure exam, it was up to me to learn how to ride my bike. And I did. In hindsight, my bike was too big for me. For a starter bike, I should have bought a small engine scooter or a Honda Rebel 250. I'm not saying that's what everyone should do. That's just my experience. Since that bike, I have owned 4 others. My current bike is a blue BMW C400X scooter. Revisiting the story gave me insight into how I like to learn. Maybe something from your past can give you insight too. I like a structured program that is organized into bite-sized chunks with experienced teachers, hands-on training, and peer support. For anyone making a career transition or learning a new skill, keep an eye on what is working and what is not. Have clear goals and recognize when something is not a good fit. The right coach can really help, and it's okay to revisit missed opportunities at a later time. My voiceover friends would say that all paths into the voiceover industry are valid. Some folks start in radio and then become voice actors. Some are opera singers or set designers. I have heard of police officers, attorneys, teachers, and others becoming voice actors too. There are even other pharmacists that are voice actors. I appreciate that all paths to success in the voiceover industry are valid because I feel like I jumped around a lot and made uneven progress. When I started out, I had an idea for a business. I wanted to narrate pharmacy continuing education journals. Rather than learning how to narrate, though, I thought the first step should be starting a business. Should I have learned how to narrate first? It's hard to tell. I had to do the business stuff at some point. I found a business mentor through the Small Business Administration's website in June of 2017. I wanted to work with a woman, and I connected with Sandra Wharton from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Her background was a cupcake business. Entrepreneurs can help other entrepreneurs, I learned. Sandra was part of the Women's Economic Opportunity Center at the Northeast Indiana Innovation Center. I think of her as my first business coach. She pushed me to create my company, form an LLC, and get an EIN through the IRS. We communicated 100% by phone and email. Sandra got me off to a good start. Thank you, Sandra. She left the organization a few months after we started working together. I waited almost a year until April of 2018 to request a new mentor from the Northwest Ohio chapter of SCORE. I ended up with a team of 2 mentors named Marty and Jack. SCORE stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. Marty and Jack worked with me for a couple of months and told me I was gonna make it. I just had to keep at it. We parted ways on good terms, and I had a good experience with them. To learn more about the Northwest Ohio chapter of SCORE, visit northwestohio.score.org. In October 2017, I met an audio engineer who made a big impact on me. There's a commercial recording studio in my town. The engineer was kind enough to talk to me about my idea to put pharmacy continuing education into audiobook format. I believe he was the first person to tell me that what I wanted to do fit into an industry called voiceover and might be closest to audiobook narration. He shared some websites and blogs with me and suggested getting coaching, possibly with Nancy Wolfson. Fast forward about 3 months to January 2018. That's 2 years ago as I record this in January of 2020. I booked my first lesson with Nancy Wolfson. Nancy wears a lot of hats and is a private voiceover teacher, among other things. To learn more about Nancy, visit braintracksaudio.com. That's brain, B-R-A-I-N, tracks, T-R-A-C-K-S, audio.com. Nancy knows her stuff and is highly respected in the voiceover industry. Nancy coached me using Skype. She's in LA, I'm in Ohio. We had a hiccup as soon as I started my first lesson. I had a problem with my computer's USB microphone. It was a Blue Yeti, and I didn't set it up right. I didn't realize it when we started, but Nancy pointed it out right away. She couldn't hear me properly. You only get one chance to make a first impression. I blew it. I made a bad first impression on Nancy Wolfson. Nancy referred me to Jonah Rosenthal at the Global Voice Acting Academy for help with my microphone. I know this sounds really basic, but I was so new that I needed help setting up my microphone. What was the problem? I needed to go into the Skype audio-visual preferences and select my microphone as the audio source. That was it. I booked 30 minutes with Jonah, and the problem was solved in less than 10 minutes. It was right then and there that I began to fear and respect the technology piece of voiceover. It can make or break a voice actor. Jonah used our remaining session time to tell me about a free software program called Audacity that would allow me to record, edit, and produce MP3s. That was a huge help. I was wondering how I was going to share my finished audio files with clients. He also told me about his Audacity webinar. Shortly after that conversation, I bought and watched that webinar. Audacity became my first recording software. Thank you, Jonah. To learn more about the Global Voice Acting Academy, GVAA, visit globalvoiceacademy.com. Once I had a microphone that worked, my lessons with Nancy Wolfson started in earnest. Admittedly, my acting ability and instincts stunk at first. Nancy could tell right away. She got me some help reading commercial scripts and learning the writer's intention. Her coaching helped and I improved. Unfortunately, I was a little impatient. I stopped booking lessons 10 months later. I started in January 2018 and stopped in November. Even though what Nancy was teaching me could be applied to any voiceover genre, my gut told me that I was in the wrong place. The material I was practicing made me feel like I was starting in the wrong place. In November 2018, Nancy and I had a business coaching conversation instead of a performance coaching lesson. We reviewed my goals. I told her that I wanted to go more in the direction of what I wanted to do, which I felt by then was closer to audiobook narration. This next part is going to sound like I got passed around a lot, and I did. It's normal to get more than one opinion when trying to make a major decision. In the end, I found where I needed to be. Nancy referred me to an experienced and highly respected audiobook narrator named Hillary Huber. Hillary and I had one helpful conversation. I was especially curious about the genre that my idea fit into and with whom I should be coaching. Hillary thought it sounded like audiobook narration and referred me to Jeffrey Kafer, an audiobook narrator and business mentor to audiobook narrators. To learn more about Hillary, visit hillaryhuber.com. That's HILLARYHUBER.com. I spoke to Jeffrey Kafer in May of 2019. He gave me great advice. In fact, his advice changed the course of my performance training. Jeffrey suggested I contact Sean Pratt, a nonfiction audiobook narrator and coach. To learn more about Jeffrey Kafer, visit audiobookmentor.com. Within a week, I had a Skype consult with Sean Pratt. When we met, I shared my business idea with him. Sean recommended I train as a nonfiction audiobook narrator and possibly an e-learning narrator. I took his advice and had my first lesson with him in June of 2019. I have been coaching monthly with Sean ever since. To learn more about Sean Pratt, visit SeanPrattPresents.com. That's Sean, S-E-A-N, Pratt, P-R-A-T-T, Presents.com. And check out his YouTube video. It's called So, You Want to Be an Audiobook Narrator? Sean is an expert at nonfiction audiobook narration, and he has a structured program for students. I learn a skill and practice it each month. He even provides some business coaching. Because of Sean, I have a couple of narration accountability buddies too. It's been a great experience, and I really feel like I'm in the right place for my performance coaching. What I haven't shared yet is my interest in medical narration. an advertisement for a group medical and technical narration class through the Global Voice Acting Academy, GVAA, hit my email inbox around Labor Day 2018. It looked interesting, but I'm embarrassed to say this. My ego convinced me that I didn't need to take the class. After all, I'm a pharmacist who already knows how to read all sorts of medical jargon. In the end, I was curious and gave the class a second thought. The teacher was David Rosenthal. It turned out to be Jonah's dad. If you remember, Jonah helped me set up my microphone for lessons with Nancy. Out of curiosity, I booked a short Zoom web chat with David to find out more. He shared some scripts from the class with me, and I read them for him. I thought I pronounced everything great. David's input, however, helped me realize that my delivery needed work. I kind of needed that class. I waited 6 months until March of 2019 to take it, though. I was still coaching with Nancy Wolfson at the time, and I didn't want to get confused by having more than one coach. David is a great teacher and a lot of fun to work with. The group class was fun too. I learned a lot, my delivery improved, and I met some voice actors who were at the same stage in their training. I'm still in touch with 3 of them. I didn't know that medical narration existed before the group class advertisement hit my inbox. When I purchased the Audacity webinar, I got on GVAA's email list. They sent me webinar and course offerings frequently. I'm really thankful I didn't unsubscribe from that list. I've taken other webinars through GVAA and learned a lot about voiceover from them. At the end of the medical narration class, David offered to work with me on a medical narration demo. I didn't feel ready, but he and I are revisiting that offer next week. I'm excited for that conversation. Around the same time I started working with Sean, I explored podcasting. A pharmacist and podcaster named Dr. Erin L. Albert recommended I get into podcasting. We met at the Metapreneurs Conference in April 2019. I approached her about narrating one of her books for Audible so it could sell on Amazon.com. Although we were unable to work together on an audiobook project, her suggestion got me thinking about podcasting. I don't know that I ever would have looked into podcasting if it weren't for her. I was not an avid podcast consumer at the time and didn't know much about podcasting. Thanks, Erin. For more about Dr. Erin L. Albert, visit her website, about.me/Erin Albert. That's Erin, E-R-I-N, Albert, A-L-B-E-R-T. It took me a couple of months of shopping, but I found a podcasting coach. I looked at YouTube. I listened to some podcasts about podcasting. After consuming content from Dave Jackson's School of Podcasting, I knew Dave was my guy. I scheduled a Zoom chat with Dave in June 2019 to learn how to get started. Our conversation led me to his School of Podcasting courses, which took me about a month to complete in October of 2019. I built the podcast in November and launched it in December. I would recommend the School of Podcasting for many reasons. Dave is experienced. He's been podcasting since 2005, and I love his podcast titled The School of Podcasting. He also teaches the way I like to learn. The School of Podcasting has structured courses that are broken down into bite-sized chunks. Dave is a great teacher and offers office hours for support. I really like the private Facebook group for students, too. We support and learn from one another. The School of Podcasting was a good fit for me. It worked, too. Here I am on episode 2. Just like learning to ride a motorcycle, though, now that I know how to podcast, it's up to me to keep my show going. To learn more about Dave Jackson and the School of Podcasting, visit schoolofpodcasting.com. Thanks, Dave. Different topic now. Coaches have helped me with the technology side of my voiceover business, too. I mentioned that Jonah got me started with Audacity. Once I started working with Sean Pratt, however, I needed software that allowed me to do an audio editing trick called punch and roll. Long story short, I had to get new software called Studio One and learn how to use it. Sean introduced me to Joe Brookhouse, and Joe helped me set up and learn how to use Studio One. Thank you, Joe. To learn more about Joe, visit voicework.me. When I got more serious about podcasting, I switched to a different audio engineering coach named Don Barnes. Joe was great, but Don offered the structure and support I needed for learning more advanced skills. I went a little crazy on Black Friday and bought 3 of Don's webinars and some audio editing software called RX7. The webinars are called Studio One Jumpstart, Studio One Advanced, and RX Jumpstart. The Facebook groups for Studio One and RX are fantastic. I learn from them all the time and reach out to Don with any questions the group can't answer. To learn more about Don, visit redbarnsaudio.com. That's red like the color, Barnes, B-A-A-R-N-S, audio.com. I want to mention some things that are on my radar for coaching coming up. As I learn more about the voiceover industry and meet people, my goals are changing. I started off wanting to narrate pharmacy continuing education journals. Now, I'm pursuing medical narration jobs, nonfiction audiobook projects, and e-learning projects. And at first, I didn't want to consider narrating fiction audiobooks. After talking to other narrators, however, I want to consider medical thrillers and other projects. I'm also taking an improv class to work on my instincts and timing. As I master the genres I'm working on, I may want to branch out to other forms of voiceover, like corporate narration. If I do, I'll get opinions from my voice actor friends about who has coached with whom, which demos are booking them work, and the right demo makers. I love what I'm doing, and I'm really excited about the future. Let's recap. I told you about my coaches and how they have helped me. Again, I would not be where I am today without help. Over time, I have learned how I learn best. I like structured programming that is organized into bite-sized chunks, experienced teachers, hands-on learning, and peer support. Facebook groups and accountability buddies are helpful. As I transition from pharmacist to voice actor, I like to find people I trust and listen to them. I'm human though, and I do make mistakes. If you are making a change too, I want to caution you about the illusory truth effect. ILLUSORY, illusory truth effect. It's also known as the validity effect, truth effect, or reiteration effect. It happens when people believe false information to be correct after repeated exposure. Coming from a pharmacist background, I like evidence-based decisions. When you are learning something new, find experts. Do research. Don't make major purchases or decisions without thinking them through. It's not a race. I'm 2.5 years into this journey, and I'm still not where I want to be. I'm uploading this podcast on Friday, January 24th, 2020. Tomorrow, I'm headed to the Cleveland International Motorcycle Show, also known as my happy place. I hope you have an excellent weekend too. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast with Kim Newlove. Please visit www.thepharmacistsvoice.com to subscribe and read the show notes.